Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Silhouette Sunday video. In today's video, I'm going to be testing the Silhouette Stencil material. I purchased this material some time ago, but I'm just now getting around to using it on a project. Now, I didn't film the on-screen portion in Silhouette Studio because the designs that I'm cutting out are actually as they appear from the library. I didn't do any modifications to the shapes that I'm going to be using. And I cut them out using the directions that are actually printed here on the roll. So it gives specific directions for blade depth and speed, and I used the directions that it gave, and it cut out perfectly clean, as you can see here. So the stencil portion that I'm using is actually the gear shape, and I removed the outside piece and the small circle on the inside, and I'm going to be using it as a stencil for watercoloring. So the test really today is to see if it can stand up to a ton of water. I've already attached my watercolor paper down to a board, and in this case I'm using an Epicurean cutting board because it's non-porous and it doesn't absorb water. And I'm applying a wash of gold paint to what's going to be the background of my card. And I noticed right away that this paint is fairly opaque, so I took a paper towel and laid it down on top of the card to remove the majority of the paint from the backer panel. That way the card is only a pale gold, and I can go over it again in a few minutes with my stencil to make it darker. Once the background was dried, I applied the stencil down to the background of the card, and I did have to finagle it quite a bit to get it where I wanted it, and it does curl quite a bit when you pull it off the backer sheet, but for the most part it stuck down fairly well during the watercoloring process. One of the things I noticed is that there was a little bit of lifting on some of the corners, and it could have been from the paintbrush, but it also could have been because I moved the stencil around quite a bit. But for the most part, it actually held up to the watercoloring very well. One thing that I did notice with this particular stencil material is that it is very sticky. So if you're using this on thinner cardstock, you may notice that it pills the paper or actually separates the layer if it's a thinner quality paper. Continuing with my card, I went ahead and I put a wash of gray paint on top to dull that gold color just a little bit, and I flicked on some paint on top just in spots to give it a more grungy appearance. And then finally I moved on to the wrench that's going to be on the front of my card, and I painted it using the silver paint from that same Prima paint pan. I removed my background from my wood board, and now I'm ready to stamp my sentiment. I went over it with a static tool, and now I'm stamping the sentiment in Versamark ink and coating it with Wow Silver Embossing Powder. Once I knock off the excess, I'm going to heat set it using my heat tool and then apply it to a card base using Tombow Extreme Adhesive, just so it holds down this watercolor paper without lifting. The wrench is going to be attached to the front of the card using a bit of dimensional adhesive, and so my husband has a place to actually write the sentiment. Because this is a dark piece of cardstock, I attached a piece of watercolor paper with the smooth side up. And to finish the card off, I decided to go over the wrench with a little bit of Wink of Stella. Here's a look at the final product. Thanks for watching.